What's up, Out the Mud? It's your girl, Monica. So it's been a minute. I got married, so I've been focused on some other stuff, but it's time to get back focused because spring is right around the corner. And what you're looking at is a calculator that's designed to help me do just that. So I want to walk you guys through how I'm using this calculator. It took me forever to create this thing, but what the goal was for me was to try to figure out how I could replace my other income with agricultural income. So I put this calculator together so that I could do that. Now let's walk through what the calculator is made of so you can kind of get how it works. At the bottom, you'll see a bunch of tabs, retail, wholesale, and you'll see here there's a rabbit fertilizer tab, but that tab used to be named cash crop number 1. And then I have the second tab beside that, it's homemade soap, that used to be named cash crop number 2. And then the third tab is bouquets, and that used to be cash crop number 3. The reason that I was able to rename those is because I actually have the ability to produce those particular cash crops. And I want to go ahead and rename those tabs accordingly. Now, I don't have a cash crop number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 yet. And those are going to be in development. And the reason that there are 10 is because Dr. Booker T. Watley says that we have to have them. And if you don't know who he is, definitely look him up. He was the champion of the small farmer back in the day. God rest his soul. He was 100% against big ag and encouraged all farmers, small farmers, to diversify their products so that they would not, have any financial problems. So that's why he encourages all of us to have 10 cash crops. And so that's why there's 10 tabs on this sheet. Okay, so the first tab is the retail tab. This tab allows for you to go in and put in how much money you want that farm to bring in every month, right? Initially, I wanted it to bring like 10 grand in a month and replace my income, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to be more realistic. Right now, I just need for the farm to pay the mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance, and I'll be happy, right? So that looks like 3 grand a month. So how does that break down? Well, the calculator is set up so that all of these yellow shaded areas you don't touch. These are automatically going to be generating the numbers, right? Based on what you put in on these other tabs, right? So for instance, the rabbit fertilizer tab, that's my cash crop number 1. And I'll go over to this and show you kind of what each sheet is made of. All of the 10 tabs have the exact same sheet. The top half is going to talk about the pricing. Again, if it's a shaded area, you don't touch it. Anything that's not shaded, you can touch. So it's also broken down because a lot of farmers do different things. Some of you guys are doing plants. Some of you guys are doing fungi. Some of you guys are doing livestock. And some of you guys are doing value-added products. For me, I am doing plants, and I'm going to be doing not livestock, value add, and that's basically it. Because fertilizer and the soap is going to be the value add, and then the flowers are going to go in the plant category, right? So whatever you're working with, just dedicate just use one tab for one thing, if that makes sense. So for instance, on the rabbit fertilizer tab, I'm not going to put anything in the plant, fungi, or livestock columns. I'm going to focus on the value add, okay? So I go over here and I say expenses. This whole second section is expenses. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say the expenses that I have for the rabbit fertilizer are the craft bags that I put it in, the actual getting the fertilizer itself, which didn't cost me anything, the stamp that I used to brand the bags, the ink pad, the gas to go get the rabbit fertilizer, and that's basically it. As far as the supplies are concerned. Equipment, I need a blender, a wheelbarrow, and I have several 55-gallon trash cans. So that's not a big deal. And maybe some trash bags. Yeah, contractor trash bags. I'm just gonna put $100, right? Okay, so those are the equipment items. Then the biggest thing on the rabbit fertilizer for me is the labor. How much time is spent grinding it down from pellet form into a powder and then packaging it into the bag and then stamping the bags and all of the things. So for that, I'm going to put 100 hours, and then I'm going to put a rate of $15 an hour because that's about what I paid my kids to do it, right? 100 hours is give or take over several months. Now, when I get to the bottom, I'm able to tell it what profit margin I want to make sure I get. At a very minimum, I like for any business that I'm doing anything with to generate at least a 35% profit margin for me. Otherwise, it's just not worth my while. So all of these tabs are going to be set up to where 35% margin is going to be the default. And you can change that to 60, you can change that to 10, you can do whatever. Anything in white can be changed. All right, so I've got all of my expenses for the most part listed. When I go back up to the top, it will tell me how much I need to sell that item for from a retail point of view. So I need to be selling, and these are 1 pound bags. I need to be selling my 1 pound bag of rabbit fertilizer for at least 11. Oh, let me talk to you about these inputs real quick. Value added units. So all of these expenses below are going to generate X number of units. And in my case, it's going to generate 1,500 bags, 1,500 1 pound bags of rabbit fertilizer. Okay. So you with me? The value added units are something that you can adjust. You kind of have to guess. You may not know the exact number, but you have to make as good of a guess as you can as far as how much output those expenses will give you. So about 1,500 bags. Wholesale pricing on that is $2.88. But you're like, Monica, you put a 300% markup on that. The reason that I did that is because I'm already selling them for $10. And if I had just done like a 15% markup, based on these expenses, I could really just retail them for $3.31. But the market has already shown me that $7 per 1 pound bag is acceptable, as well as $10 per 1 pound bag based on the supply and demand. So I was playing around with the markup number just so I could get it to $10. So let's go back and take the markup down to 250%. So I'm going to mark that up ridiculously high just because the market will bear a $10 bag of rabbit fertilizer, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's that. Now I'm going to hop back over to the retail tab, and it automatically brings that $10.08 over so that it tells me, hey, look, if you want to make $3,000 per month and the only thing that you have as far as cash crop is concerned is this 1 pound bag of fertilizer, you're going to have to sell 298 bags every single month in order for you to hit your $3,000. Okay. So what does that mean? That means if this is all I'm going to focus on, then I need to get out there and hustle 298 bags of fertilizer every single month. All right. But that's kind of hard. I don't want to do that. Right. But this calculator will also tell me a little bit more about how I can do that. So let's look at that as well. Down here at the bottom, those number of units feeds into total number of units. So, I've been in sales for a long time, and typically 1 out of every 5 things is going to happen. So if I want to sell 298 bags of poop, then I need to find 1,488 people who are interested in poop, right? Because 1 out of every 5 of them is likely to buy. So that means I need to be on my business Facebook page. I need to be in groups where people are growing things and they care about the type of fertilizer that they use, and finding 1,488 people every month to be able to rely on 298 of them buying at the $10 in order for me to hit my goal, right? So that's kind of how that customer database field at the bottom works. Now, I have been making soap. So soap is going to be another one of my cash crops, and I'm going to do a 4.5 ounce bar. So I need to go in, and you can already see my numbers, but let's show you how it broke down. I'm going to go over to the homemade soap tab. And again, I'm going to focus on the value added column because obviously it's not a plant, it's not fungi, and it's not livestock. So I need to put all of the things that are involved in making soap. I've got lye, I've got my essential oils, I've got my fat, I've got my colorants. Those are all the supply items. I can put things in here like rubbing alcohol, and I can put things in here like vinegar for cleaning, right? So those are the types of supplies that you put in for that I'll need for soap. Equipment wise, I need a crock pot, wooden spoon, soap cutter, soap mold, measuring cup, scraper, and that kind of thing. Now, am I going to have to buy a soap cutter every single time? No, I am not. However, when it comes to my pricing, I still want to calculate it. I still want to factor it in when it comes to establishing my base pricing. All right, so I've gotten all of my supplies and equipment basically taken care of. Now let's talk about the labor. How many hours am I going to spend making soap using this amount of supplies, right? I'm going to say about 20 hours over several weeks. And I'm going to give myself an hourly rate of $10 an hour, but if I wanted to change that to 15 or 20, I could do that. Again, as long as it's not shaded, you can change it. Next, I'm going to leave my profit margin at a minimum of 35%, and then I'm going to go up to the top to see what my numbers look like. So it's telling me that I'm going to need to retail a bar of soap for about $3.83. Oh, I forgot goat's milk. Because why would somebody pay that much for some soap if it wasn't made with the absolute best ingredients, right? So let's just call it 200, right? So now I'm going to say, okay, $4.50 a bar. That's I don't know. I have to go back out into the market to see where that falls along when it comes to organic and, chemical free soap. So I'm going to come down off of this retail markup. Instead of 25, I'm just going to mark it up 10% just to keep the price, around $4, right? So wholesale, my pricing would be $3.60, but let's talk about the value added units. I'm assuming with this number, usually it's going to default and say 1. Now you come in here and you change it accordingly, because obviously if I'm only going to be able to make 1 bar of soap, I'm going to have to charge $1,980.99 in order for all of those numbers below to work. Well, that's not realistic. And I can make way more than 1 bar of soap with all of the supplies that I have purchased. So let's go up and change that number of units. That's what this is all about. You change the number of units based on what those expenses, what those supplies will let you produce. So I've got, probably 550 bars of soap in that. Let's just go ahead and call it even 600, because a lot of this I've bought in bulk. We're just going to assume that all of this is enough for me to make 600 bars of soap. Now, if that's the case, that means I'm going to be able to sell those, or need to sell those, for $3.30 each. So I'm going to go back over to the retail tab and kind of reassess the situation, right? My goal is to make the $3,000 a month. So at first I had to sell 298, 1-pound bags of rabbit fertilizer to do that. But now that I'm getting into diversification and I've got a second cash crop, now I only need to sell 149 bags of rabbit poop, but I need to sell 454 bars of soap, right? See how this is working? So the more cash crops you add, the less pressure there is on one crop. You take the pressure off of each crop as the more diverse your farm becomes. And I think that's what Dr. Booker T. Whatley is trying to get us to understand in his book, is that, and his book is called How to Make $100,000 Farming 25 Acres, circa 1980 something. Okay. The book is now $300. I got it for like $27 4 years ago. It's continuing to rise in price. Now, he wants us to diversify and make sure that we're not depending on one particular crop. And you can see this basically kind of plays itself out on this particular spreadsheet. So I can see now that I don't have to hustle the rabbit fertilizer as hard when I introduce another crop. But gosh, that's a lot of soap. So the third cash crop has come into play, and that's the mason jar bouquets. I'm going to be growing those not in my high tunnel, believe it or not, because I still haven't worked out irrigation and land management, because that grass will get shoulder high really quick here in Tennessee and the snakes will be out, and I am not going to be walking gallons of water back to the back anymore. I don't have to now because my husband has a truck, but I still want something that's more sustainable when it comes to the flowers. Plus, if I put it all the way back in the back, the deer and the rabbits are going to get me. So I need to be able to control my pest pressure, if you will. So we're going to put them closer to the house, and we're going to use pallets as raised beds. So we're going to do mason jar bouquets. And as you can see here, the pricing has already been determined because I've already been kind of playing around with it. So let's go over to tab number 3. And again, this is a value added product. So here, all my supplies, I'm going to do snapdragons. I'm putting the seeds, the cost of the seeds or whatever I'm going to be, using to seedlings or whatever. So I'm just pretending with numbers right now. I'm not sure if these numbers are accurate, but these are some of the flowers that I'm going to be growing. Snapdragon, zinnia, sunflowers, dahlia, baby's breath, I'm going to have some fillers, Celosia Cosmos, and another filler, right? So I'm going to do 20 to 25 stems in a nice mason jar bouquet. And these are the supplies that I'm going to need. So I'm just putting a number associated with each of those seed orders. So there we go, $500 for seeds. Then pallets. I'm probably going to get a lot of them for free. So I'm going to go ahead and just put $100 there for pallets. I am going to have to bring some soil in for the raised bed. So I'm going to put 300 there as a number. The fertilizer, $260. Guess where I'm getting that number from? I'm getting that number from the wholesale price of my fertilizer up here, because I'm going to buy the fertilizer from myself. I've got fertilizer, so why would I buy it from anyone else? So I'm going to buy it from myself wholesale. So it used to be $260, but I played around with those numbers. So it's now $288. So let me go back to bouquets, and instead of $260, I'm going to do $288. All right. So that represents about 100 bags. So flower food, after the flowers are harvested, they're going to sit in buckets, so they need some food. Scissors, mason jars for each of the bouquets. So obviously I'm anticipating being able to do 700 bouquets over the season. This is not all in one shot, guys. This spreadsheet represents the entire grow season or the entire sale season, okay? And that could be 10 months. In my case, it's really going to kick off in April and go all the way to probably October. So that's kind of what this time frame looks like. Twine for my mason jar bouquets and whatever else I get. So right now, roughly $1,558 in equipment. Now we're going to labor. How many hours over that entire season am I going to be spending on flowers? I just did a rough 20 hours per week. And, you know, it's going to be more some weeks, less others. And so I just put $10 an hour. But you know what? I'm probably going to give myself a little bit more, $15 an hour. So I'm going to do that there. Did I give myself $15 an hour here? Yes, I did, on the soap. So I'm going to give myself $15 an hour here on the flowers. And so that number of hours, either I'm going to pay myself or I'm going to pay one of the kids. So I'm going to be paying somebody, right? Now, profit margin minimum is 35%. So up here, it's telling me I'm going to need to charge at least $30 a bouquet. Could I get away with that with 20 to 25 stems? Maybe, maybe not. So I'm going to either have to figure out my expenses and lower them a little bit. Maybe I am going to have to pay less, right, to keep my bouquets a little bit closer to that $20 mark. I might be able to come down here and get myself, you know, let's do 650 hours. And this is all estimates, but then you need this in order to plan. So we're going to lower the labor a little bit so I can keep that retail price at $20 a jar. Why? Because people are going to be coming to my farm and they're going to be buying them off the farm. So I'm not going to have any distribution costs. I'm not going to have to be sitting at the farmer's market. I'm not going to have to necessarily deliver. But if I do deliver, of course, there will be delivery fees the customer will pay for. So let's go back to that first tab and let's see how implementing that third cash crop played out. Now we've got a $21 jar of flowers. So I might charge $20 even for it. Get those numbers to right where it's at 20. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and get it to 20 right now. And I'll adjust my markup. See how you can play with this so that I can get it where I want it. And let's just do 13% even. All right, that's close enough. We'll do 12, 8. All right, let's do 12, 5. Okay, 12.5% markup gets me right where I need to be at 20. What? Let me update it. Why didn't it not update to $20? Let me go back. That's going to bother me until I figure that out. So retail pricing on that is $20. Oh, I know why. You see this second column right here? Accidentally, there's something feeding into this column. Remember how I told you that when you go on these tabs, you're only supposed to be working in one column? Well, something is off because that first tab should read $20 a jar, but it's reading $20.77. And so that tells me something is wrong. So I'm going to go back to that bouquet tab and I immediately see the problem. There's something here and it shouldn't be. So let me go figure out what it is by scrolling down. I've got hours of labor in an empty column when it should be 0. So I'm going to zero that out, and that should take care of the problem. It zeroed out the numbers up here. And when I go to the retail tab, it's $20 a jar, just like I have it over here, right? That's how you know you have something in a column that's not supposed to be there. So I'm going back to this main tab just to see what's what. So now, okay, I like this. Now that I have 3 cash crops, what this is telling me, it's telling me that I need to sell about 100 bags of rabbit fertilizer. I only need to do 300 bars of soap, which when you think about soap, depending on how many molds you have, you're making 20, maybe even 40 a pop. So that's not as crazy a sounding number as you might think. Mason jar bouquets, 50 is all I'll need to sell. This is over the course of the season, right? Every single month, I would need to sell 100 bags of rabbit fertilizer. Every month, I would need to sell 302 bars of soap. And every month, I would need to sell 50 mason jar bouquets, right? That's not that bad every month, right? So in order to hit my $3,000 a month goal, if I sold more than that, great. But I would need at least to sell each of these numbers in each category in order to hit my goal. So that means I need a customer database of about 2,200 people who love my farm. So that means I need to be on social media. I need to be showing them what I'm doing. I need to be inviting them to come by the farm. I need to be interacting with them and so far and so on. And that's where marketing comes in. So this spreadsheet is amazing. Now, as I go into, we're getting some laying hens. So cash crop number 4, eventually will be eggs. But right at the beginning, those laying hens are going to be for my family, right? For our eggs. We buy, 3 dozen eggs every week. So that's something I want to get rid of. I don't want to have to go to the store to buy eggs. And I haven't been to the store to buy soap in months. The boys still buy their own little body wash or whatever, but personally, I'm using the soap that I have made, and that's what I will continue to do, and eventually they'll catch on or whatever. But my point is this calculator will show you if you sit down and work with it. And, with the expenses, I was just putting numbers in. You really want to sit down, go to these different websites, figure out how much everything is going to cost you down to the penny, then figure out how much you will be able to produce based on those, based on the expenses and the supplies that you'll have. And just work it from there. But yeah, it is an estimate until you actually do it. But this is better than nothing. Because if you're just going out there willy-nilly, you don't know how much you're going to make, where it's going to come from, who's contributing what, or anything like that, right? At least with this calculator, I know I'm making at least a 35% margin. I know exactly what I need to sell and how much and at what price. And one big mistake a lot of business owners make, especially farmers, you don't include your labor. This calculator is ensuring that you're accounting for your labor at some level, okay? So if you want this calculator, it's in the link. The link for it is in the description box. I have a training tutorial that shows you how to use it. I just kind of did on this video show you how to use it, but definitely feel free to check it out at the link below. It's about $100, but I think it's worth it. I think it's probably worth more than that because it took me hours to come up with all this. So you don't have to do that. You could just get it, download it. You do need a Gmail. You do need a Google Sheet. You will need to make a copy of it. And the way you do that is go up to File, make a copy before you start to edit, okay? Make a copy before you start to edit. And then now you can go into this spring with a real set of numbers, okay, that you can achieve, all right? And you're not going to be like doing it by the seat of your pants. And for those of you guys who are wondering, well, what if I've got animals? I'm doing goats. Okay, no big deal. Just go to the tab, rename it goats, or say you're doing goat's milk. That's actually would be considered a value add. Let's just say you're doing goats, so that we can actually use this livestock column. So if you were using goats, you would put all the supplies needed in order to raise your goats, right? And that would include the goats themselves, the mom and the dad, or whatever they're called, and then all of their feed and whatever you feed, anything that you need to take care of the goats. And then the equipment necessary for the goats, from the fencing to whatever is involved in the goats, right? So you put all of those numbers in, along with how much labor and how much you want to put on value as far as your labor, right? And obviously your margins, again, those can be adjusted, but I recommend 35% margins. And then you'll scroll back up to the top and it'll tell you, oh, don't forget to put the units first. How many kids will you have from basically these supplies? And if it's 2, then great. And then it'll tell you how much you need to be selling each of those for live weight, right? So that's kind of how you would work it from the livestock point of view. Obviously, if you were going to just be selling the meat, then you would obviously make whatever adjustments, because you would have expenses that would involve processing and things like that that you would have to put in here, right? So processor or whatnot. So that would go under supplies. So that's kind of how you would use it from a livestock point of view. For those of you guys who are doing mushrooms by the pound, same thing. You go in here, everything supply-wise that you would need to grow your mushrooms, from your grain spawn to your bags to your alcohol and your petri dishes, all of the things that you need, you go and you put that there, put their cost, equipment that you will need, as far as the humidifier and your heating and cooling, whatever you're doing to make sure you're growing the mushrooms in an efficient way, whatever equipment you're using, put the cost there. And then from there, labor, your margin, and then go up to the top. Your units are going to be obviously in pounds. So you would say how many pounds in your mind, and then put that number here, whatever your markup is, and it's going to tell you how much you should retail. So this works for plants, for fungi, it works for livestock, it works for value add. You could do this with anything. Goat's milk soap would be considered a value add. This calculator works for anything, and it has up to 10 different crops. And if you have expenses that, like say you start working on this thing and you're like, I need more room, I have more than 10 things that I need to put in this supply list, no big deal. Just insert a row, and at the end, it will automatically, in that yellow field, the total, it will calculate all of those cells that are in between. So you can add rows to your heart's content, okay? If you need to expand, okay, the number of supplies, same thing with the equipment, just add a row. Just make sure you add it somewhere between in the middle, right? So yeah, that's how that works. And then if you're gonna undo something, just click undo. And so this is what I put together so that I can have some direction this year, and I can know exactly what I need to do in order to get the $3,000 in revenue I need off the farm to pay for the house. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Peace.